Tatiana coin is considered an altcoin. I'm sorry, a meta coin because it's built on top of Counterparty, which is built on top of Bitcoin. So that's how it goes. It's like Bitcoin, then Counterparty, and then on top of Counterparty, there's the meta coins, and that's what Tatiana coin is.
Thanks. So, more questions. You can ask them from there, or you can approach. No, here. Get the mic. Grab the mic.
All right. So basically, I have a question. Like I said yesterday, it's a very emotional feeling to have you here, all of you right now in Krakow, and talking about these things, because what you talk about is you're Americans and you have problems with freedom, so your freedom is threatened, and you come here to Poland, who just 25 years ago, was fighting, or the whole time was fighting for the freedom, and so yeah, it's a very weird feeling to have you here asking for help and so on and so forth, but it also gives the assurance that we always have to fight for freedom. My question is, what would you say about the to look about the threat of freedom in general, and what would you say about the American society right now, and especially about the young generation? How well is it prepared for this kind of fight? Because here in Poland, most of the young people actually are pro-freedom. The people who are, let's say, leftist or do not care about the freedom are mostly the older generation, and the vast majority of the young people are actually pro-freedom. So how is it in America? Is it the same?
I'll let Tatiana talk about the young people, but generally, that is so interesting to me that you just said that. My impression is that it's a mix with the young people. I do think a lot of them are waking up, but I'll let her discuss that. It seems like with the internet and the revelations about the NSA and what we've learned about privacy online and what we've seen, what I've personally seen, the United States government and how it operates, I definitely think our freedoms are threatened. And my experience being here is I see that it's become decentralized in the sense that freedom isn't just in one country or a couple of countries. The world is made up of freedom, people, and status, like we talked about yesterday. It's kind of coming down to that. And then people who don't have a clue what's happening. They will eventually. Politics will come to them if they don't go to politics. Politics will eventually come to them. So I probably wouldn't have thought to come to Poland if I hadn't met Kamil Cebulski and such a great person and freedom fighter, and he brought us here. And it's been a real privilege to be here and meet all of you, and it is eye-opening that there is this passion for freedom here, and I think a clarity. I think that you're more clear about how fragile it is because you haven't always had it. And in America, I feel like it's a kind of a slow boil. It's kind of like you put a frog in a pot and you slowly turn up the flame, and so it happens so slowly you don't really feel it until you're boiling. I think that's what's happening. And I and Tatiana and other people are trying to say, the flame's going up. It's happening. And I'm going to be speaking to Students for Liberty, a regional conference next month, and I'm going to tell them about you. I'm going to tell them about their comrades. I don't want to say comrades, but their friends in Poland, Eastern Europe, and that it is a worldwide thing, and how inspiring you are, and how it's decentralized, it's open, it's changing because of technology.
When I was little, I used to come to Poland every summer. And I'll always remember this. I was sort of nerdy in elementary school and middle school. But when I came to Poland, I went to camp. And I remember everybody was pounding on the cabin door, chanting, "We want the American girl. We want the American girl." And I like to think it's because I was a very charming and lovely person, but I think that actually had a lot more to do with where I was from. It was that everybody loved America because America was freedom. America was opportunity. Nowadays, people are pretty angry at Americans. And it is very striking that not so many years since the time that I was a little girl, things have changed so significantly, where we do have American people searching for freedom here in Eastern Europe and trying to form alliances against totalitarian rule. In America, we have a lot of different factors going on. We have our education system. People go to school in order to be taught how to be obedient slaves. That seems like a very strong statement, but in my experience, the American students are not as educated as they are here in Poland. And the only thing that they're really taught to do is to go along, keep their head down, and they're constantly manipulated through the imagery and the stories and the music and the media in order to continue to establish the state as the ultimate power. Every few years, we get a new president, maybe 8 years, and it's really a different face for the same type of ruler. Sometimes they've got, it's actually kind of insulting because it's a gimmick, right? They're like, okay, we're going to get a black guy this time. Then people are going to be okay, because if you say anything against him, then you're racist. Then they're going to try and put in a woman, right? Because, then a woman, and so they consistently try and pick out a new puppet in the front that people could get angry at. And they continue to instill a sense of, I guess, they're basically pitting different people against one another. We have a very big police brutality issue in the United States, and that is a very serious problem. But, and there is racism involved with that. But the way that it's being presented to people is that it's a racial issue versus a state versus the people issue. And I think that it's really difficult to try and have people realize what we do have in common because of these sort of strikes against us. The media really is pitting everybody against one another. And then they also use these sort of false issues, that are just there to drive wedges between people that really don't have a big deal at the end of the day. So I think it's a universal search for liberty, and I'm very encouraged and very proud of my fellow Polish people. And, I told Lynn and Kim on our way here, you guys are going to love it in Poland, but I wasn't quite sure. And seeing that revolutionary spirit that I know from my mom and her friends, and seeing it alive and well in all the young people that we've met along the way and all the people that we will, it's really, really encouraging. And I love that it's a universal effort.
I just want to also add that I'm not only going to talk to students, but I'm going to tell Ross about you. And I know that he will be so encouraged by you. And he said, and I read it in the letter yesterday, but he said that you guys are proof. You are living proof that liberty cannot be destroyed, that Stalin couldn't destroy it, Hitler couldn't destroy it. They can't destroy it because it is in the human heart and it will never die. People will always want to be free. And you, after what your country has gone through, that you're here working for freedom, fighting for it, holding the line, is an inspiration to us. So thank you.
I actually have an additional note for that. We were all at a bar last night at the after party, and what I noticed was that there were people that were married. And one of the ways that I think that people are prevented from knowing about freedom is that the children are separated from their parents and people are not able to preserve the family unit. And I'm very happy to say that here in Poland, at least, that seems to be somewhat intact. Obviously, you don't want to spend your life with somebody who's beating you. But when you have divorce so frequent, and when you have the children out of the house at 5 years old, going to a school, being trained to be a good American, you know, I pledge allegiance to the flag, and the mother has to work maybe 2 jobs, and the father has to work maybe 2 jobs, it takes away the ability to influence how the culture will be raised, and instead you allow the opportunity for the state to fill in. And I think that that's something that really is an important thing for us to take note of.
I wanted to ask something about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. I know there are some people in states that have decided to leave the fiat money at all and live with Bitcoin. For example, Derek J is one of those guys, and I met him as well. And how many of them have you seen? There are some people who decide to maybe do it for 1 month or 1 week or for honeymoon. And how do you get in this topic? Do you think it's possible? Are you willing to achieve this goal? How close you are?
I know a lot of people that try and use Bitcoin whenever they pay, but you know, there are definitely some, I think, technical challenges with that we're working to overcome. And the lack of clarity on regulation, I mean, in certain ways it's clear, but you never really know which way they're going to change their opinion. It can be a little bit difficult, especially if you're a political person. You know, we went to Auschwitz, and one of the first things and the main things that I noticed was who was the first group that the Nazis went after? It was the political dissidents. So I think that there's a little bit of a concern when using Bitcoin as a form of protest, honestly. I mean, it's easier to use fiat in some ways, that any kind of actions that you do can potentially be tracked and used against you. And it does give me a little bit of a reason for concern. But I try and use Bitcoin. I try and stay out of the system. And I know that there's a lot of people working in that regard. But I do think that we have a way to go.
So you've partially covered this topic already, but I would like to touch it again regarding the division of society, because what I can perceive here in Poland is that you have the politicians from all the major political powers talking about just every single thing but the economy and the truth about what to do. So they talk about the minorities, they talk about some things that are totally irrelevant, and so that they try to divide the society into every possible way, into every group that matters, to them, and instead of uniting people in growth and in the important facts, and leaving the other parts of life to their freedom. So is this the same in America?
Sounds just like our president. Very divisive, classifying people by race, by gender. I see people as individuals. I don't really care what color they are. I care if they want freedom or not, and if they want to control me or not. And if they're on what Tatiana calls the freedom team, hey, everybody's welcome. But our politicians do that. Our president does it. And I think they use I think they fan the flames. That's my personal opinion. And the media, of course, plays right into it, because that's what they do. And it is terrible. And it does create division and, destructive.
I think that, obviously, I feel very strongly that is the way that we are pushed as a society in order to see those divisive lines. But on a day-to-day interaction with people, I think that even the most racist, you know, when people sit around and they say, oh, the blacks, or oh, the Jews, or oh, these people, on an individual basis, the same people that will lump people together in those categories, they actually have Jewish friends, they have black friends. So I think that this is certainly something that's manipulated by the media, and they use people's emotional reactions, and then they basically blame things that are not really the source of the problem. And I think it's very disappointing, and which is why I think that we need as much independent media and just alternative information available. That gets a little bit tricky because then you have a flood of really wacky stuff, and then you've got some stuff that's a little bit more focused. I try to approach things in a more friendly way, but it's hard sometimes because you feel very passionately. But I think if people can try and find something in common with other people instead of seeing their differences, I think that those are important key steps in order to move forward.
A good example, too, of what Tatiana said is that on an individual level, I go to the prison often to visit Ross, and I am I'm definitely in the minority as being white, and but the visitors, we're all friends. We're all in the same boat. We're all hurting. We all have a loved one in there. A lot of them nonviolent. A lot of them shouldn't be in there, and we band together. And it's just one example. But it's we don't look at each other like racially. We're together. And at first I thought that going to the prison as a white person, I would be a victim of racism because a lot of the people who work there are black. But actually they're mean to everybody equally. So I realized it wasn't a racial thing. Or nice, depending on the person. But anyway, just an example.
If we don't have any other questions, I just wanted to speak to something that I didn't get a chance to talk about before. So the reason why I'm here is because of LYN and because of Ross. And nobody has really met him. And back in June, I did meet him during PorkFest, actually. While you guys were all enjoying the New Hampshire sunshine, I went to prison for the first time ever. I had never been to a prison before. And, you know, we all sit around, we talk about people grandstand and say that they would be willing to go to jail for their beliefs, or that they're more libertarian or more anarchist than the next person. But the reality is that I don't think people know what they're talking about, and I think that there is a lack of integrity with people. When I went and met Ross, I tried to look really nice. And then, of course, they made me go and change my pants because they were not appropriate for jail. So I had to go get prison pants. And they were really, really mean. And by the time that I was going upstairs, you know, I had wanted to be this, I guess maybe this is a little bit of the Polish mother training, but, you know, a ładna little panienka, to go and cheer him up and smile and, you know. And by the time that I went up there, I couldn't control myself. I was a basket case. It was so horrible. It was one of the most impactful, if not, yeah, I'll just say one of the most impactful things that I've ever experienced. Because here I was in a jail, and all of a sudden you realize where that wall is. And there's people in cages behind that wall, and then I can leave. And also, as people outside of the wall, we put ourselves into our own cages. So it was very striking because to me, this represented much more than just Ross. This represented hundreds of years of people being put in cages. And yes, some people are bad people. There are murderers out there. We got to deal with them in some sort of a way. But there are a lot of people that didn't deserve what happened to them. And there are just so many of their stories that have never been told. They had so many families in this prison coming to visit their loved ones. And so, you know, you look around and you see the prisoners interacting with their families, and then all of a sudden you realize, wow, you know, this doesn't just impact the guy in jail. This impacts his wife, his daughter, his son. how will they be when they grow up if they don't have a father, if they don't have somebody making an example for them? Now, people make mistakes. Arguably, these people were not very good examples. But not having someone at home to help provide for the family is not a good way to lift people out of the ghetto. So when I came in, what they do is they put you in a glass room, and you're just sitting next to the people, just like we're all sitting next to each other now. And all of a sudden, Ross comes in, and, you know, I give him a hug, and I sit down, and I start crying. And I was so mad at myself. I didn't have a tissue. I forgot the singles that I wanted to use in the vending machine. I was so upset. And all I wanted to do is bring this person a little bit of peace. You know, and that's why I wrote the song about Ross, right? To try and humanize the situation. Meanwhile, this guy with prison for life is petting my back and saying, it's okay to cry, it's okay to cry. And you think about how we interact as a society. It's not okay to cry, you have to hide your emotions. But here was somebody who arguably has stronger, more depressing emotions than any of us, who's facing something more horrifying than any of us can imagine. And he's telling me it's okay to feel what you're feeling. And so we went on and we talked, and I was struck by what a compassionate person he was, and how people have all these walls up. Another thing that he did was, you know, I like junk food. And I said to him, you know, can I get you a bag of Doritos? You know, what are you eating in this place? And he's like, oh, no, I wouldn't eat that. What do you mean you're not going to eat a bag of Doritos? I'll eat your Doritos. You're in jail. You should be happy I'm bringing you Doritos. And he said, no, you know, the food here is really bad, but I make sure that I take the skin off of the chicken. And, you know, I'd never eat the cake because I see the guys, they come in here and they're all buff, and then they leave and then they're all fat because they've been eating the cake the whole time. So these guys are malnourished. But here you have Ross, who arguably should be trying to get to his death as fast as possible and eating himself into a grave with, I mean, I know that sounds like a harsh thing, but he's in the worst situation possible, and he's able to manage himself as a person. And it made me really think about, well, maybe the cookie thing, I haven't succeeded, but, you know, it made me really think about how I conduct myself and what standard to which I hold myself. And I was so impressed with the way that he was as a person, and the way that he talked about, for example, I said, well, what do you do if you're sad in jail, right? And he says, well, you know, I go into my room and I allow myself to feel it, and then I come out a day or two later, and you know, I cry if I need to, and I get mad if I need to. Think about how many people you know that sit around drinking alcohol for every little thing. I got a paper cut, I need vodka. Or I need to, you know, I had a bad day at work, I need a joint. And not that any of those things in small doses are bad, but if you think about our society and the way that we're constantly trying to escape our feelings, I was again struck by this human being that was able to hold himself in this most miserable situation to a standard that most of us can't do. And at one point, you know, Ross had to go, right? So they start to take him away. And he says to me, he's like, I like you. And I'm like, I like you too. And, you know, we say it as friends or whatever, but it reminded me I'd been seeing this guy. And in New York, dating is like horrible. So, you know, this guy, do you call him? No, you wait 3 days and you send one text, and then you pretend you're too cool. You act like you have other things going on. And in this simple, bare bones moment, I was able to be more honest with this person, and he was able to be more honest than anybody I had met on the outside. And all of these things were something that I took away from that experience. And I think that that's something that other people can learn from with Ross as well. He's been painted as many things, a drug kingpin, a violent person. This is a guy who's trying to teach a bunch of freaking arguably criminals in jail how to do yoga. He's teaching them and helping them get their GED. He's not getting paid for this. He's doing this because he is holding himself to a higher standard just off of his own strength as a human being. And I think that we can all really take something away from that. And I hope that that gives you a little bit of an insight. I mean, LYN can say, oh, he's a nice guy, he's really positive. But as an outsider, I too have seen that. And I remember after I left, he was checking on me to make sure I was okay. And he's like, listen, you know, I don't want you to be upset about what's happening with you or what's happening with me, because, or anything really, because as long as we're alive, there is reason to hope. And if he can find hope in his situation, I think that we hopefully can find a way to push forward and to try and fight for liberty.
Would you mind Ross becoming the president of the U.S. at some point of time?
We have a lot to do before that's going to.
I'm serious.
It's funny, you're not the first person who's said that. They also wanted me to, by the way, run for president, but, you know, never mind. Would I mind? No, because that means he'd be out of prison, wouldn't it? I think it would. So, I'd be, yeah, let's do it. I just want him free. He needs to be free. He has so much to contribute. He does not belong in prison. He is not violent. He's a great person. You'd all love him. And I hope to bring him to Poland.
I don't know if Ross wants to be president, but I will say that he does have leadership qualities. You know, after the Ron Paul campaign, there's been sort of a vacuum left within libertarian politics. And I think that Ross is a very good role model. I mean, that sounds a little bit crazy, but I think that he has that same integrity and that same honesty and that same relentless pursuit of liberty as Ron Paul did. And I think that he is an excellent leader. And yeah, let's get him out of there.
Any more questions? No? So thank you very much.
Thank you.